Welcome everybody to a new edition of the Dept Talk, Lunch and Learn. Today we will discuss how you should navigate the cookieless world, and you can ask your questions in the chat in the stream you are watching. Some of the questions will be answered directly in the chat, and others will be taken along with us to the Q&A at the end of this talk. If you are using Zoom, please put your view on speaker view. You can do this in the upper right corner of the interface in Zoom. And of course, you can take notes and write along, but it's not needed because we send over recordings if you want, and you can request to ship this slide deck to your inbox at the end of this talk. Okay, are you ready? Let's start with a little story. Imagine you walk into a store, and the store manager of the store will put a barcode on your head. He follows you throughout the store, but also on your way back home, and he writes down everything that you do. And after that, you will be spammed with folders, leaflets, based on your behavior. Sounds a little bit scary and totally unethical. However, online, we still think this is perfectly normal. We do this all the time. And the cookie that enables this online normal will die, making this personal marketing practice as we know it coming to an end. So you can argue that the death of this cookie is a threat to all of us, especially to digital marketing, digital marketeers. However, we don't think it's a threat. It's a wake-up call for us, for marketeers, for product owners, designers, developers, everybody in the digital world. It reminds us actually that we should be aiming for a warm relation with our clients and our prospects that is initiated from two sides and not only from the advertising side. So that's the topic we'll be covering during this session. And I am Koen, a digital strategist at Dept. Happy to host this session together with my colleague Christian. He is our leader of the data team, knows everything about navigating a world of without cookies. And Chris will guide you through the world of consent mode, aggregated event measurement, flock, and server-side tagging. So stay along with us to hear more about this. Chris, can you introduce yourself shortly?
Yeah, sure, happy to do so. So hello everyone, I'm Chris, head of data at Dept. So I'm responsible for all our data activities, looking into the interaction happening on all the campaigns and platforms we work on, but also combining that data with any internal data source to recognize patterns, to predict behavior that we can use in personalization. And obviously, with all the developments happening in the cookie and the legal landscape and the tech landscape, that has an enormous impact on the work we do from the data side, from the marketing side, from the platform side. So that's why we thought it would be very relevant to update you a bit on our knowledge and vision on that topic today.
Cool. Can you, in addition to the introduction, give us a little bit more insights of what will happen with the cookie and why this is such a big topic and why we are doing this talk and why everybody, 150 people already joined this talk to listen about it. What's the fuss about?
Yeah, so let's do that. And first of all, I think it's handy to have, with everybody in the call, sort of an overview. Maybe some of you are aware of this, but at least that we're all on the same page of what's actually going on. So if you simplify how the internet works, let's say if you are a user, then you would open your device, whether that is a MacBook or a laptop or a mobile device. You open the browser of that device to go to a URL, an internet page. And that browser will then request that website at the server where it's hosted. So there's communication between the device through the browser to a server and back, so you get to see your information. Now, at this moment, only you, the device, the browser, and the server also know that this communication took place. But for marketing purposes, we want to share this data. We want to know things for measurement. We want to do things in advertising. So we're accustomed to place cookies on top of the browser to share that third-party data to companies like Google or Facebook. Now, there are two developments that are impacting how this data is or can be shared. And you've got the legal developments on the one hand, mainly known by GDPR, and you've got the technical developments on the other hand, mainly known by ITP, Intelligent Tracking Prevention. And the situation can be that a user visits your website, he gives consent in GDPR, so the data is allowed to be shared, but the browser will still block the data because ITP, for example, on Safari, will still prevent the data from being shared. So these are several stations that your data has to go through. Now, this is quite the impact. This is literally breaking things. This is breaking measurement, conversion measurement. This is breaking the possibility to do targeting, especially retargeting. And because it is breaking conversion measurement, it is also breaking the possibility to do either manual or automated optimization. Manual because you as a marketeer no longer have the full insight in the effect of your campaigns or your platform. So it's becoming more difficult to optimize them. But on the other hand, companies like Google, like Facebook, have all kinds of algorithms where they make use of especially the conversion data to automatically optimize, for example, targeting or bidding. If that conversion data isn't being shared anymore to those algorithms, they can't perform their work. So both the manual and automated optimization is being impacted. We have of course, different browsers in the world, and they all behave in a different way. So, for example, Apple Safari is at the moment the most extreme, and simply says we're going to block all 30 advertising, so we're going to limit the time that these cookies are allowed to exist, and then we'll just remove them, which is the most extreme. And if you go down the list, for example, take a look into Google Chrome. Google Chrome at the moment still says we'll allow for everything. And obviously, because they have quite a different position, Apple earns their money by devices and Google by marketing and advertising income. But even they now announced that because of this privacy development, they will say goodbye to their third-party tracking by the end of this or beginning of next year. And it's also broadened from a browser development to a broader development. So now on the mobile devices and the Apple devices, in the latest iOS update 14.5, they are applying the GDPR mechanism to the sharing of data. So any app that is being installed or opened, the user gets a request whether you want to share that data through in this case, the iOS system to the vendor it belongs to. And there's an enormous difference between the behavior on browsers versus mobile devices, because on browser, we see GDPR acceptance rates being quite high. But on the iOS rollout, we see the acceptance rates being extremely low, even up to 80-90% declining. So that has an enormous impact on the amount of data being available. So if you would combine that, this would roughly be a visualization of what's happening. You've got all the user data either on the browser or on the mobile device. And then there are several steps that the data has to go through. So first of all, people need to give their consent, GDPR-wise. If consent is given, an ad blocker on any browser might still prevent sharing of that data. This is a relatively small group, but especially ITP and related initiatives automatically block the data from the browsers as just described. So the amount of data that remains is very limited to what we were used to. Then the question is, how are we impacted? Can you sort of put a number on it, what the actual impact is? And that is a difficult question to answer, since the first versions of ITP date back to the year 2017. GDPR started rolling out in 2018. ITP developed in small steps, as did the behavior of people in regard to GDPR. So it's sort of a silent killer, you could say, where there are these small differences on a daily level. So if you compare your data from today between yesterday, you probably won't see a difference. Whereas you look back a year or two and then make a comparison between how Chrome is attributing your data now and 2 years ago versus how non-Chrome browsers are attributing data, you'll see bigger differences. In our conversations on this application, also with Google, we came to a visualization of how you are impacted more on a generic level to give you an idea of how this develops. So before ITP, before GDPR, so 2018 or earlier, all conversion data was available. You could measure everything, and it would be 80% or more. And that part, which wasn't available due to some kind of technical reason, Google, Facebook, or other tech vendors were able to model that part because they could recognize users across devices. In the present, and that goes for both last and this year, we see that there's a big change happening, especially given the steps that ITP, Safari, but also Firefox are taking, where less and less conversion data is available by default, and we become more reliant on the data that Google or Facebook can add from their side because they are able to stitch their users. And new is also that we can't only rely on what they are able to model from their systems, but we also are getting the possibility to share additional data to have more accurate modeling. This will become crucial. Looking to the future, with the recent announcements by Apple, with Google saying goodbye to their cookie on Chrome end of this or beginning of next year, we will become more and more dependent on tooling to share the data for either the conversion data to be observable by default in your measurement systems, but definitely also to be able to do proper modeling. And if you will not apply these tools, the data that remains will be a very small amount, and it will become very untrustworthy, and you're sort of blind in the optimization of your campaigns and your activities.
Wow. I think this really helps to understand the problem, Chris. Small remark for everybody who's listening. If you have questions about what's been told by Chris or what will be told later on, you can ask the questions in the chat in the stream you're watching. Some will be answered directly, others will be brought along with us to the end of the Q&A. First one, I was wondering, Chris, the GDPR is a European law, but the implication of the law differs a little bit per country, or isn't that the case anymore? Is it all the same now in all European countries?
The idea behind the GDPR is that it's the same across all countries, but several countries do have the possibility to write their own law in the application of the GDPR. And nearly all countries did so with one exception, which is the Netherlands. The Netherlands has an exception on the placement of anonymized statistical trackers. So if you anonymize Google Analytics within the Netherlands, you are allowed to place it without consent. So you can simply have it running always. But in any other country, you'll also, for analytics, also if it's anonymized, you'll have to get explicit consent. So people have to press a button and give their approval before they can apply this.
How did we get that one through in the Netherlands? I'm wondering, but
indeed, there was well, it depends from your background, of course. And marketers will be happy, but consumers might have their doubts.
Another one, you said it's a silent killer. If you're working for a company, if you want to identify how big the problem is for you, how much data is being lost already in the last 2 years, what should you do? Can you do this easily?
What we often do is take a look into the difference between how Chrome is attributing your traffic to your campaigns versus how the non-Chrome browsers like Safari, Firefox, and Edge are doing so, and look into the difference at this moment and the difference 2 years or longer before. So really look into a report of last month and a report of 2018, for example, to see how the difference is between the Chrome and the non-Chrome browsers, and how big the difference is between what sessions and conversions are attributed to your paid campaigns or are simply put on direct since they're not able to recognize. And then you will see a difference.
Yeah, and the difference is then maybe a little bit by difference between platforms, but most part of it can be attributed to the implication of GDPR and technical limitations.
In Chrome at the moment, all cookies still function as normal. So that's, you could say, the closest representation of the truth, where the other browsers are limiting the data. So there you would definitely see a lower attribution to your campaigns already.
Cool. Okay. Now let's go ahead and let's take a look at what we can do about it.
Yep. So
basically, there are two options, right? You have on the short term, you can add additional tooling to make sure we don't lose all the data that's currently captured via cookies. And on the long term, we really have to think about a more kind of long-term digital strategy where some way of identification plays a role. And to make this more specific, and before we dive into those short and long-term solutions, let's take a look at this example. I became a dad last year, so I'm looking for a stroller for my baby. And an upper funnel ad on Instagram for strollers triggered me to go to bugaboo.com. And via the measurement, my visit is attributed and my behavior to the algorithm. And the algorithm decided that I am relevant enough for a remarketing campaign, which leads to a new targeted campaign of exactly the stroller that I want. That's marketing as we know it. Now, all this behavior click data is collected via cookies. And as you explained, Chris, Safari, Firefox, and Edge, it's not possible anymore. So it's been blocked. And Bugaboo, in order to identify me and put me in their retargeting campaigns, they need to make sure that and convince me that I somehow make myself known via a login to some point in order to stitch my visits over time and stitch my behavior on the website to the campaign data. Alternatively, they can recognize me via a link in a newsletter, but before that's possible, they should convince me to leave my email address before they can target me via their email campaigns and automation campaigns. So compared to a world where third-party cookies were fully allowed, the volume that Bugaboo now recognize after email login is way lower. So in order to make up for this loss, the efficiency and the returns of your known group, of everybody who you do recognize, should be increased in order to stay on par with your sales and conversion performance. And in order to do this, you need to bring all the data together via data science before you can do any personalization and optimization. Whereas in the world where third-party cookies were allowed, that was much easier because it was mostly part of just your marketing tooling. Now we made it more clear. It's time to dive into the specific detailed solution. Chris will tell you a bit more about specific tooling. And after that, I will take a look at the longer term strategy that you can follow for loyalty and making sure that you do know your customers and you get first party data into your databases.
Yes, indeed. So I'll be going on this conceptual model into the application of tools for all the things that Koen just described. And I'll do that across 5 phases. So a first phase, or the first phase, is to preserve your data, knowing that cookies are blocking the sharing of data. Can we go around the browser and can we get this data in a different way? So I would say, first step to take in that sense is to make use of server-side tag management. As I described in the example in the beginning, you've got the communication between your device through a browser to a server. At the moment, we're accustomed to get all the data from the browser, but you can also migrate that to the place where the information is being sent. So get the data from the server at the moment when it is sent to the browser, so that the browser doesn't even know, you're sharing that to the third party, since it can't jump in between because you're doing it from the server side. Now, it's good to be aware that this is an answer to measurement data. So you know how many people you had on which pages and version and so on. But this is not an answer to targeting, because if I want to target users, I still need to know who they are. And the server doesn't know who you are. The browser does, but the browser won't tell the server because of the ITP developments just described. So server-side is a great tool for measurement, but it's not an answer to targeting. A different tool to apply in the preserve phase is what we call consent mode, or what Google calls consent mode is their tool. And this goes into the GDPR side of things. So server-side is for the technical side of things. And you still need consent to be able to, or to be allowed to use server-side. Consent mode, the purpose of that is when no consent is given, anonymous pings are being shared. So there's no user data whatsoever, but Google will tell, like, hey, there was a user or there was a conversion. So at least you can look into the correct total numbers in your reporting, and they can also make use of this for their modeling. So they know exactly what the gap is that they need to model towards.
Chris, about the consent mode, is that tooling that's provided by Google, or how does this, can you apply this easily? How does this look like?
Yeah, this is I would say, very easy one to implement. It's the simplest setup is simply through the tag manager. It's a bit more than a checkbox, but this is really simple to implement. So this is definitely something to do as soon as possible. It's still in beta at the moment, so you also need to get approval by Google to be taken into it, but it's an open beta. So this is definitely something that everybody can make use of. Similar to that is what Facebook called aggregated event measurement. And it's sort of comparable to consent mode, but it focuses mainly on the iOS side of things. So when an app is not allowed to share data, they will have this anonymized ping so they can use that for modeling, like Google does it with consent mode, more on the browser level. So these 3 are tools that you can make use of to preserve data. Reality is then also that you can't preserve that much. This is mainly into measurement on server-side tech or GDPR and AEM on the GDPR side of things. On engagement, on interaction, on campaigns, this block is simply there. You can't go around it. So if data is blocked, then the question is, what alternatives do you have to remain relevant in your campaigns? First and foremost, that is looking into or back into contextual targeting. This is something that has been there around forever and already existed before user targeting. And obviously, everybody started focusing on user targeting since that's more effective. But since that possibility now slowly goes away, focusing once again on the context, on the content where you are going to show your ads. So what's being written and described on the page where you want to show your banner. What's the topic of a video, or what's the topic discussed in the social posts. You can make use of contextual targeting to still find a relevance of your message to your users, also if you don't know who those users are. And this obviously really is meant for upper funnel campaigning. Next to that, Google also has two initiatives, from which Flock is the best known. They also have the other one called Fledge, two fantastic abbreviations. For example, Flock stands for the Federated Learning Cohorts, which still doesn't tell you anything, of course. But this is what they presented as their alternative to the disappearance of the advertising cookie within the browser Chrome. So it's a Chrome-based initiative, and it really focuses on, if you browse on the Google site or on YouTube, for example, the things you enter there, obviously Google in their systems know something about your behavior. So
there's a lot of criticism about that specific tool or initiative by Google in the market. And is it really anonymized? So, and what
this is something that's being argued, because on the one hand, it's not a user specifically, but they add people to groups based on their interest, and then the groups are, as they say, anonymized, but you can still target these groups on that behavior. So Flock was launched as an initiative also to other browsers, like, hey, please follow this initiative. And the other browsers at the moment responded with, no, we're not going to participate, since we see it's different, but it's also sort of similar. So Flock is really in the early phases. Everybody's anxiously awaiting what's going to happen next. They did announce a closed beta at the end of Q2 this year, but that hasn't been released yet. So everybody's sort of waiting to see what will happen with this initiative. They presented it as their alternative, but it's not live yet. So this is definitely a development to follow. And that is on the engagement upper funnel, what you can do. So contextual for now, and keep a close eye on what Google is doing with their Flock and Flash initiative. Then on to the third phase, which goes all about the identification of users. Because if you can only measure through analytics, but you can't target, and you're going to go contextual, how will you become relevant on a personal level? You need the user to tell you who they are, simply because the browser won't do that anymore. They will block that data. This is not a tool or a trick to apply. This is a bit bigger. This goes into your loyalty program. Do you have something set up where you already are asking people to log into your platform? And do you have a benefit for those people? So if they make use of a login functionality, and what do they get in return? And are they going to get a discount or free shipping? Will they, for example, get access to premium content? So do you have a testing tool or a calculation tool or saving preferences or additional information that you only provide when people do such a login? You'll really have to look into what can I either ask people to take that step for identification on my current platform, or what do I need to add to my platform or campaign so that people are willing to take that step. And that said, it's not only the login. Yes, the login is great, but anything that happens from a marketing automation campaign also helps. So any click where you can pass on an ID, preferably an email address, but a telephone number or any cookie ID or CRM ID you have, that will help into the identification of people on top of what's happening on login.
Regarding the login, Chris, are we still, a question we get a lot from clients, are we still allowed to remember that you did log in? And is there any lifetime on those first-party cookie limitation, so that we need to forget about you in the future? Or is it easy to, or is that not the case?
Now, there's a clear distinction, and this goes into the GDPR side of things, between a functional cookie and a marketing cookie. So functional cookies, a cookie, for example, that is meant to remember your login, that is something you need to have the site do its work where it's meant for. So that is allowed, and that is allowed forever. Using the login data for marketing purposes, that's something you need consent for. So a login on itself doesn't give you the possibility to do marketing. That login needs to be also a consent needs to be given when you create an account, or when you go, for example, through the cookie wall, or when you drop your email address. You need to get consent to make use of the data for other purposes than just the functional data. So yes, login, you can always do so, and this will not also be impacted by ATP, but the marketing use of that data does need a consent. All right, on to the fourth phase, connect. if the user took the step to log in, or by another way, you are able to identify that user and you're allowed to use the data, you want to make sure that you connect that data to a historical track record. So you want to have a system, your own system, in place. And we often refer to this as a customer data platform. It can be a data warehouse, a data lake, whatever you like to call it. They often serve a similar purpose. But the idea is simple. Any login or any identification on one of your platforms comes together in a centralized storage where you are able to recognize the user across all these data silos, across all these platforms. And there are many ways to go. So you can go custom build with a Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure or Amazon. You can go out of the box with Ethereum, a Snowflake on the higher end, or the data tricks and Squeezely on the lower end of the market. There are many options. And I would definitely look into, what's the kind of application you want to use it for, other than simply storing, and base your decision on what tool to acquire or what tool to create based on those applications. Two obvious applications to take in the connect part, because if you have the data centralized, obviously you're going to do so because you want to make use of it in marketing. So you want to exchange the customer data lists, literally the email lists of your clients, with parties like Google and Facebook, for example, for targeting purposes. So you can upload them and say, hey, these are my clients that I've identified themselves to me. And I want to show a specific campaign to them, that you can do, for example, by the Google tool Customer Match. A similar application that's more on measurement and conversion. Google has enhanced conversions where Facebook has the conversions API. So you do the same thing. You exchange email lists or client lists, where in this case you also add transactional data. So they did a conversion of this value, or did a request for proposal, or any other lead gen activities. But in principle, they come down to the same thing. I have centralized storage, and I will exchange what I have in my systems with Google, Facebook's, and others for either targeting or reporting purposes.
Do I put it too simply then that in order to measure what we have been used to, we in the past, like only a year ago, we should do a lot of additional tech setup and tooling in order to do the same in the future? That without that tech tooling, you will not be able to do the same quality of data measurement and data-driven campaigns that you currently have in your marketing tooling.
Yeah, definitely, and that's a hard reality. If you don't act on this, you will end up in a situation where you have very limited data available, and you become blind in the optimization of your campaigns or your platform. And the solution is definitely that you need to apply, on the one hand, these tools like server-side tag management as a simple step, relatively simple step, or CDP as a more extensive one, but definitely focus on the part where you start working towards that identification, where you get to know the people, and you also have an answer to those people which is relevant to their behavior. That actually is a bridge to the final phase on enrichment, because you can have this fantastic tech setup, but the reality is that the total volume that you will have available of customers you are able to reach out to will go down. You will have less people identifying themselves than you now have in your cookie pools. So you want to become more relevant to those people if you're going to run a campaign. So if you have them in a centralized storage, by making use of all kinds of data science concepts, recognize patterns, predict behavior on conversion intent, on client segment, on product interest, and so on. And if you're going to exchange a list, make sure that that list has a certain purpose or demand or interest, where you have a campaign and content ready and waiting across all your channels to have a higher relevancy to that lower volume. So you're still able to get a good return on your activities.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk now about the long-term solutions, because next to the tools and tricks that you just mentioned, you can do more. And actually, we think you should do both. So both short-term tools and tricks in order to preserve what you can preserve, but also think about the long-term strategy to make more people known to you, so you get more first-party data into your systems. And this is also the part where you turn the threat of dying a cookie into an opportunity. But you need a strategy for that. What you need is more first-party data. And you understood by now that in this world without third-party cookies, it is very important to get to know your visitors, not only who those visitors are, but also what they want and what they want to achieve. Since you can no longer secretly save information about them, it's time that they make themselves known. Users will only do this when you give them something in return. And what this actually means, of course, depends a little bit on your business. If you are a web shop, it will be different than, for example, a B2B company or a consumer brand. We try to categorize those solutions into five categories. The first one is premium content. In each of these, we'll dive into a little bit more with some examples. A second is free gifts. A third one is save and remember services. Freemium models is the fourth one, and the fifth is referral programs. So let's dive into the first one, premium content. The first example is, as I mentioned before, I'm shopping for my newborn. In this case, looking for a baby seat, and of course, I only want the best. So looking for an objective research on all those seats. And in the Netherlands, the ANWB can help me with it. And on this page, they show me the test, and I can scroll towards the test, which is all for free. I would have been more than happy to do a simple login or create an account to get this valuable information. And for them, it will be very valuable to get to know me, because then they know that I am a daddy, and they also know what services I will be interested in the coming months and years. The Consumentenbond, so the consumer association in the Netherlands, has a different approach. They also have this quality research on car seats, but they put it behind a paywall. And just for one report, I'm not really interested in a long-term subscription of €5 in a month for just a one-off report. What they do on their kind of referral product pages, it is already much better. They give, they try to convince me, when you scroll down, to opt in for a 7-day trial. And in return for that opt-in, I can read the research, and I can determine after 7 days if I want to continue the payment service, the paying service or not. So those are examples of how you should treat your content, and think about what you should give away for free and what you can put behind a login or paywall. Second, free gifts. Stupid simple. First, you have to decide for yourself what is the price of a lead. And if you are in an industry where signups are already quite costly, so your CPA is already quite high, then it does make sense to think about sending over free gifts. The good thing is, when you send over something to somebody's house, of course you need contact details, so it makes sense to ask for them. I recently moved. I need new window decoration, but of course, when you buy curtains online and shutters, you want to know how those materials feel and look like. So I chose to go to veneta.com, because they gave me the opportunity to order samples, color samples, material samples for free. I gave my personal details and created an account, so they had their first party data. And I really liked the products, and I bought my stuff over here. And they also knew that I was in the market, and they could, because I opted in, they could tell me about my progress and send emails to me about the remarketing campaigns that you would normally have done went via email. Another example is when you buy products in classical retailers, for example, cars or bikes or electronic goods, like in a physical store. And as a producer of that product, in this case, Ridley, which produces and makes racing bikes, they don't know anything about the consumer. They only know that they sold a bike in a certain region at a certain shop, but they don't know anything about the person that bought that one. So what they already do is sell or give away for free additional warranties. But of course, you have to sign up your bike at their web shop. This is also a way to make your consumers known to your own brand. It's already been a practice that's been used a lot, but can be used more and it can be a solution for this cookieless world. Third, save and remember, some service-related tricks or strategies. When you spend time to use your digital product, it can make sense to offer them a save the setting feature. For example, Ethos in this case, I did a project where we created a skin scan. It's an AI-driven tool where you need to make a picture of your face and answer some questions. And of course, it takes some time, and you get a result of your skin type. And you also know what type of products you need. And it makes sense to save that into your account, because the next time you need the right products, you want to use that profile data again. So then you give away this service for free, and then you ask them to make themselves known in order to save that into your account. Another one is more complex sign-up flows, for example, application flows, or in this case, a slimming program where you need to answer all kinds of questions. It can sometimes take a bit too long, and you can offer the opportunity to finish later. But then please make an account so we can save it in your account. And a more easy one is filtering for the e-commerce market. If you do extensive filtering on a product lister page, you can offer the service to save your filters so that we know what you are looking for, and the filters are applied in your next visit in the future. Also a strategy in which can help to create that let people make accounts and make themselves known. The fourth one is working for digital services and apps. It's a freemium model where you give away some features, just enough to make people sign in, but not enough to fully satisfy them with their needs. A very successful example is Evernote, but I could also have brought along Strava or Spotify, for example. The founder of Evernote said, the easiest way to get 1 million people paying is to get to know 1 billion people. So make a product that a lot of people want to use, give it away for free, but only those features that are satisfying the first needs of the user, and then additional features are put behind the login wall. Nothing new. This is already a model that's been used a lot, but it can be applied into the world of without cookies, because it gives you a lot of first-party data, because people have to log in to use your service. But it can also work for a slimming program. In this case, I can start for free. And I can start following my slimming program. I can download 2 or 3 or 4 recipes, but if I want more, if you scroll down to the next page, and I need to activate my account before I can go to the day 3 and day 4 recipe. And the last one is a referral program, also nothing new, but can be applied in into this kind of field where we present solutions for the world without cookies. This is the Morning Brew. It's a famous Wall Street newsletter for everybody working at Wall Street. And they have a very, very successful referral program. Existing users share their enthusiasm about this newsletter. And in return for that, they give away presents, points or perks that only can be claimed after the one that you refer to signs up. So this way you stimulate others to sign up for the service and make themselves known. It's of course already a famous marketing tool, but also can be used in this world of without cookies. These are some longer term strategies where you really should think of, and it depends a little bit on your business what fits best. But I hope this gives an idea of what you can do in order to turn the threat of a dying cookie into opportunities for your business. And Chris, can you give us some final thoughts before we go to the Q&A?
Yes, we by the way already see a lot of questions coming in, so we'll definitely go into those in a moment. But to conclude our story, there's a way of looking into this that we would like to share with you. So, if you go back in time, we marketeers, our world used to be that of the strongest opinion. Whoever had the strongest opinion or the biggest creative idea would be the winner. And that world evolved to that where the smartest and most efficient worker, who was best in optimizing and running their digital campaigns, would become the winner. And at the moment, we face a new reality where tech is taking over. And tech is taking over both in limitations, but also in possibilities. Because on the one hand, you've got AI, data science, machine learning, disrupting what we can do in digital marketing, creating fantastic ways of all kinds of personalization activities. But on the other hand, you've got the cookie that is dying and that is limiting the amount of personalization that we can offer. Now, think back to the example that Koen shared in the beginning, where the store clerk would put a barcode on your head. In the offline world, we think it's really normal that you have this anonymous volume walking in and out of the store. And the store can follow you, the store doesn't know anything about you, and you're just anonymous. And that's the default. We also think it's really normal that if a person asks you a question, as being the store, you try to get some additional information and you try to give a relevant answer. So from that conversation, you might get a transaction or a business relation. And that is typical behavior that we find completely normal in the offline world. And this is something that we need to start embracing in the online world. Because in the online world, we are becoming fully dependent on walled gardens or first-party data. Google and Facebook have their walled gardens of data that they are storing in their system, and they're offering you with all kinds of possibilities to target their users on their systems. But you don't want to be fully dependent on them. You want to make sure that you've got as many people as possible that walk into your store asking you a question, identifying them to you, so you can give that relevant answer to them. So you have their data in your walled garden, and you can make use of that for any personal or relevant answer. And yes, there's a lot of tech involved, but robots will not control the world, especially they will not control marketing. They will change the kind of work that we will do as a marketeer. We will have to control the machine. And that's a good thing, because a lot of manual work is being automated away. If you have a data setup as just described, properly set up, you have people log in that flow into a centralized storage that are being predicted and audiences are being shared channels, our jobs will change, from my perspective, for the good. From a strategy perspective, we will change from focusing on campaigns to focusing on audiences. From a data perspective, analysis is looking back. We'll be looking into predictions and looking forward. And if we run a campaign, we will no longer focus on the channel and channel optimization, but focus on the journeys across channels for the audiences. If you're a consumer, if we as marketeers do our work properly, you will grow from being marketed or being spammed to being serviced by those people that you want to be serviced from and find a higher relevance. So I would say, yes, it has an enormous impact, and our jobs and our possibilities will change. But if we do this properly, they will change to a situation where we get to do a more creative job again, where we put the customer more centric again and try to be more relevant to our users that want to have this conversation with us instead of generating waste. Thank you very much for your attention so far. There are a lot of questions dropping in.
Yes, because there are a lot of questions still, and we have almost 15 minutes to answer some of the most interesting questions. Some are already answered in the chat. Others will be taken care of right now by Chris and by me. The first one I would drag into this Q&A is a question for Roland. Are enhanced conversions by Google the alternative for server-side tagging? Or do you expect that there will be a server-side tagging solution for Google Ads, like conversion API for Facebook?
Yeah, so definitely the final part. The enhanced conversion is not an alternative to server-side tracking. It's a different tool with a different purpose. And where server-side tracking is meant for preserving analytics data, because you migrate from the client to the browser, from the browser to the server. Enhanced conversion is meant for making sure that any conversion that's being registered in your system is being shared with either analytics or advertising tools to make sure that you not only have all conversions, but only have the actual value from those conversions. So it can be used simply for measurement purposes, but it can also be used, for example, to show the difference between a net result and a gross result, because you can take out any return shipments from your CRM. So you provide more actual data. So these are different tools with different purposes. And indeed, the enhanced conversions comes closer to the Facebook conversions API. And that also means there's no one tool to solve this all. There are many tools for different purposes. And you'll have to look into what tools are relevant to your situation and apply several. So it's not one thing. It will be a tech stack of several tools to serve all the different purposes you have.
Yeah, cool. I hope, Roland, that answered your question. Another question from Truong, I hope I pronounced this right. With the latest Apple update, iOS 15, the function hide my email also enables users to create and delete many addresses as needed at any time. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so let's be honest. This is a from a marketer's perspective, a scary development, and it's also to be expected, right? As I said, this will only get worse. Both from the legal and tech developments will keep on going. So you will have less data available by default. You become more dependent on first-party data. Now, Apple is taking steps to also limit the amount of first-party data. Of course, this is just an announcement, so it's going to be interesting and important to see what the actual rollout will look like. But this will definitely limit the amount of stitching that you're able to do, definitely across environments, across companies. If the anonymizing is in such a way that your email address is a different hash for every company, but per company it's the same, then I think the effect is overseeable, but it will impact you. But at least in your system, you will able to work with the same hash. But this will definitely impact the amount of people that you are able to recognize from a first-party perspective.
Yeah. Another one, Wouter Graatsma, how might putting valuable content like this, I think the examples of premium content of the ANWB and the Consumentenbond, put this behind a login might, of course, impact your SEO because it cannot be indexed by Google. And how should you treat this kind of downside of the idea of premium content behind logins?
Yeah, I think this is a smart point, because the reality obviously is that if you're going to hide content, it will have an impact, and it will have an impact on SEO and therefore on volume. So the amount of people that will come to your platform, and it will also have an impact on the people that are on your platform who are willing to take the step. So you mentioned the ANWB, the ANWB. If they switch from providing a test on car seats from simple free content to log in and then get access to the test, you will have less people logging in. So not only can your volume go down, also the amount of people taking the step to conversion can go down. The question is, isn't there a higher value to those people that do make themselves known? So I would argue that the amount of people on the platform not taking the step to identification is less important than the added value of those people that do identify themselves to you, because then you have their first-party data and can give a proper response. The SEO side of things, definitely true. If you're going to hide things behind the login, it cannot be indexed. Therefore, I would also recommend make sure that you have landing pages with proper content describing what they can go towards after the login. So make sure
you can also kind of communicate those landing pages that are visible before login.
Exactly.
A little bit the freemium, freemium, combine it with the freemium model, as I explained, where you put the light version of this research already, like you present already 4 of the 10 variables on which you tested those products, for example, in this specific premium product comparison. And if you want to see the comparison on all variables or the final conclusion, then you should log in. So then you have still content before login, which can be indexed by Google. That's very valuable for the user. And to get it all, you have to pay with an account and make yourself known. That can be a solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Pim asked a question. What's a good next red, and maybe also now already a first answer on where to house my customer data? What are the options? What should we think of? Where should you put your own first-party data?
And I think that first you got to make a decision. Am I going to go custom build? So am I going to create something on one of the cloud providers, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, or am I going to go out of the box? So will I go to a software vendor who provides such a system based on a license fee? And then you can look into the Telium Salesforce segments of this world on the upper end of the market. And you also have a lot of local heroes. So for example, in the Netherlands, you've got companies like Datatrix and Squeezely, and you've got the likes of those across many markets. Indeed, there's a lot to read on that. We'll give you a good read from our side at the end of this talk. But this is typically something I would say to discover in a more extensive conversation, because you want to base this decision not on the I would say tech benefits or pros and cons from a technical perspective, but really define the use cases that you want to apply this tech first. Then start looking into the setup you already have, the gaps to fill to be able to deliver on those use cases. And with that background, decide on what tech you need to be able to fill those gaps. So start talking use cases before you start talking tech.
So first decide what you want before you decide how you're going to do this, with which tooling and where you house this.
Yeah, exactly.
Hope this helps, Pim. And the read, you can contact us via LinkedIn and we'll send over some nice reads about this topic. Roy asked a question about the lifetime of cookies. What impact do we already see or do we expect in regard of reducing that lifetime? For example, a branded upper funnel campaign, it can take quite some time before you are finally doing the conversion. Or if you have a long conversion window product, buying a house or applying for a new job, or so, how do you stitch all those interactions together? Does the lifetime, reducing the lifetime of the cookie already impact that measurement?
Yes, it does. And there are, at the moment, I would say 3 main flavors. So the worst or from a marketing perspective is Safari. Safari says, I will limit all advertising tags to 7 days. And even if there are tags with, for example, link decoration involved, I will limit it to 1 day. So if it's obviously meant for cross-domain activities like advertising. So depending on the tag, there's a 1 or 7 day lifetime for your cookies. If you have even if you have a short cookie window, this will impact conversion window. This will impact your data, and definitely on products where you think about for a month or longer. So yeah, do be aware that all Safari traffic is already impacted by either a 1 or 7 day window, dependent on the cookie. Then you've got the Firefox approach, where they say we give also a limited duration of 45 days, but we will check on a daily basis whether a new activity took place. So if within these 45 days a user returned, they will extend it for 45 days, and otherwise after 45 days, the cookie will also be deleted. And then the third flavor is the approach of Google Chrome at the moment, where they simply allow for everything. So if you put a cookie and say this cookie will live for 2 years, it will actually live for 2 years. But as said, they will end their support of that practice end of this or beginning of next year. To counter this effect, consider from the measurement side, server-side tracking, because from the server side, you can influence whether Safari will actually limit it to 7 days. Because if you get your data server-side, they can't limit it to the to the 7 days. So it will live for a longer period of time. Please do know that this trick on Firefox will not work because of the daily checking whether there was activity in between, otherwise they will still block it. So there are different flavors, and yes, you are being impacted with a 7 or 45 range at the moment for Safari, Firefox, and coming end of this year also Chrome.
Cool. Yeah, and a final question, because of time, we cannot enter all questions in the chat. Final question we can still answer within the time frame is from Stefan. We are talking about big solutions, about a lot of ideas and tools, tech, long-term strategies. And he says, interesting, but how does this work for small, medium enterprises? So it sounds like a large investment. Not every company is that data driven. Can we justify the cost, and where should you start actually to make it a bit smaller for the smaller companies with not that an extensive marketing team, for example?
Yeah, I think this is a very understandable question. First of all, you'll need to have certain skills, and you can hire those skills at an agency, but you can also acquire those skills internally. So if you're able to get skills in your own team, that will definitely save on costs to make. But these are specialist skills, and they're at the moment very popular in the market, so they're difficult to gain. So that might have an impact, but still, that is a first step you could take. Also, look into what tools you do and do not want to apply. Something like server-side tracking or consent mode or Facebook's aggregated event measurement, these are not costly. Yes, it requires a setup, but it's very overseeable. And even a CDP, although that might cost as an enormous investment, if you simply want to have an exchange of the clients you have in your customer database every night send that list to Facebook or Google, that isn't a big project. That is very doable, and that already is the concept of a CDP. And you've even got small tools with low license fees providing that. And obviously, if you're going to grow towards continuous data, a marketing team, running personalization concepts and personalizing campaigns across all channels, yes, that requires an investment, both in team as in tech. So you have to make a decision as a meat company to what point you want to go. But it's not the case that you can't do anything. You'll just have to stop at a certain point or see a business case.
And I would also say, if you are the one that's responsible for marketing, your first step would be explain this, make it stupid simple, and explain to your management, maybe even the owner of the company, if it's a smaller company, how big of a problem this is. So identify, as Chris explained in the beginning of the talk, identify the impact it's already having on your situation. And if you don't have that much of a media budget, or the impact will also be smaller, and you also don't need all these solutions that we presented. But if you're spending hundreds, thousands, or millions euros for your marketing campaigns, in that case, it does make sense to go all out and do everything we just presented. Yeah. So it also starts with an impact analysis. Make sure that there's a business case of all these ideas. We would like to bring this one to an end. You can contact Chris or me via LinkedIn if you have any additional questions. Also, if you want to have a copy of the slide deck we presented to you, but you can also download that one or see the recordings when you scan the QR code on the right side. It's the download page. So thanks for your time, Chris. Thanks for your time and all the expertise you brought today. And we hope to see you at the next Dept Lunch and Learn session.
Close to you.